about what criminologists like to call declines in criminal opportunities. During a very severe recession, when unemployment rates are elevated for some time, people stay home more. They're not on the job, they spend more time at home. And burglars tend to avoid occupied households when they can. You don't want to have to deal with somebody in the house if they can avoid that. So by staying home, you deter burglary, not only in your own house, but plausibly in houses around yours because you're home and your eyes are on the street. So it could be that during a very serious recession, criminal opportunities, at least of certain types, tend to decline. Burglaries would be the best example. But when people do venture out of the house during an economic downturn, they're probably less likely to carry things of value with them than during more prosperous times, and therefore they make less attractive targets for street robbers. This is a plausible explanation. The problem is it also applied to past recessions, not just the current one, and yet in past recessions we tended to see crime increases. So that one needs, it needs evaluation. What else might be a reason for why we're not seeing crime increases currently? Here in Texas, I have to mention firearms. Maybe it's the case that as the population has armed itself in response to the Obama presidency and in response to perceived future increases in crime, that a heavily armed citizenry, as the expression goes, has deterred crime. Who wants to, after all, prey on somebody who's got a firearm and may be able to very effectively fight back? Possibly, except we saw increases in firearm possession during previous recessions as well. And yet we saw crime increases occurring. And the whole issue of the relationship between, the so-called more guns, less crime hypothesis, that the more prevalent firearms are in the population, the less crime, because in short, victims are able to protect themselves or deter criminal activity. That whole issue has received a great deal of research attention, and I actually served on the National Academy of Sciences panel in which we were charged with looking at the evidence and coming up with some overall conclusion. James Q. Wilson was on that panel, and Wilson is no liberal when it comes to crime or when it comes to gun policy. And the best we could conclude from the research was the jury remains out. Case not proved. We didn't conclude that there was no evidence. We concluded that the models used to estimate the effect of shall carry statutes on crime, the idea being that as more states permit citizens to carry concealed weapons, that sends a message to would-be offenders not to offend because the victim may be armed. That whole literature generated enormous debate. The models estimated in that they're quite fragile, meaning that with relatively plausible changes in assumptions, you can change the results pretty easily. So we concluded case not proved. It's kind of a lengthy conclusion, but it seemed to be the one that best fit the facts. So I'm skeptical of the argument that a more heavily armed citizenry has deterred crime, both because of the research results I just mentioned, but also because we can also look in the past and see increases in a whole series of indicators, certainly firearm purchases, overall household firearm possession during past periods of crime increases and economic downturns. It's even been suggested that there's an Obama effect at work here. I don't think this one actually works, but I think it's worth at least discussing, since we don't have any hard answers. The idea here is that the Obama nomination and the Obama election was an important galvanizing source in disadvantaged minority communities in the U.S. in particular, African American communities specifically. And that message of hope and change and the historic significance of the Obama election may have somehow generated hope in a population and thereby suppressed illegitimate activity, including crime. I don't know how one tests that, and I think I'm highly skeptical of that, though I have heard that. Another one is that the stimulus package has muted the impact of the recession on the population, at least to some degree, and thereby may have delayed crime increases that otherwise would have occurred. We talked earlier about one of the most important effects of the stimulus spending was to keep police officers employed in municipalities that were experiencing very significant budget crises. A substantial fraction of all the dollars, and much of the dollars of the stimulus spending that went through the Justice Department, flowed through the local municipalities to employ police officers or enable them not to have to let officers go. That's a plausible reason why we might not have seen crime increases as yet. It's not a very good explanation of why we've seen crime declines, however. So the stimulus spending argument may have something to it, but I think it's relatively limited. So I'm going to leave it, at least I think I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know why the economy has not increased crime rates, at least as yet during the current recession, but I see it as one of those opportunities that that come along that really challenge some of the basic assumptions one makes, and as a result, ultimately is going to produce better research and increments to knowledge. So that's all I have to say. We have, I don't know what time we're supposed to finish.
I think what we can do is we can thank you now. If people need to go and grab a cookie or whatever on the way out, we'll do that, and then we'll let people want to ask questions.
Okay, I'm sorry for running over. It was 7 o'clock, so excuse me for running over.